Hi, I'm Russell Sturgis. I'm the founder and principal of EAP Mentor. Welcome to our blog series, and today I'm doing the final blog in our series on mindful living. Through the course of the previous blogs, in this particular series, we've looked at how awareness and mindfulness are intrinsic to being able to experience a better quality of life, one that has a greater sense of inner peace and stillness, and one that leads to a balance between our work and our personal life, and a balance between the love that we extend to others and the love that we have for ourselves. And this being the last one, I want to sort of give a bit of an idea of what a mindful life would look like in terms of what it is that would be happening in your day-to-day life as you were practicing and being committed to being mindful. Now remember, our definition of mindfulness is this whole idea that we have a choice. And the choice is that instead of living life habitually, there's a choice to be able to engage it in a more self-loving manner, in a way that would be truly beneficial to ourselves. You see, if you don't remember that you have a choice, then you're only going to do it how you've always done it, which is the habitual way of approaching life. So here you have an opportunity to be able to explore on a moment-by-moment basis the option that there's a more self-loving alternative. So one of the key elements to living life mindfully as something that you do minute to minute, hour to hour, day to day, is that you hold the awareness that there is a more self-loving approach. Now that often means that you've had to have spent time establishing a vision of what that might look like so that you can make reference to it. Sometimes it's just enough to say, hang on a second, I don't have to do this habitually, I don't have to be here doing what I've always done. There may be another way of doing it. I often have made reference to the fact that I'm sure each of you have your, when you hop out of the shower or the bath, that you have a habit about how you dry yourself, and you do it the same way every day, and you've probably done it that way for years. And I'm just want to challenge you to have a go at doing it differently. And if you do it differently, doesn't mean that you leave a part of you wet because you haven't followed the routine. It's kind of funny that so much of what we do has that element of routine to it. And we've talked about those statistics during the course of our video series. So, as I said, living mindfully then is remembering that you have a choice, and that in fact it's more than just remembering you have a choice. It's remembering that you have a more self-loving choice in terms of what it is that you're doing, how you're relating to somebody else, how you're relating to yourself, how you're fulfilling your role, whatever it is that there's this ability to recall that there's a more self-loving alternative. Now, the second part of that was the idea in terms of mindfulness of then following the path of least resistance, which means doing what comes easiest, but it was qualified, and that was with this remembrance that there is a more self-loving alternative. And of course, how that works is that as you do that, you build neural pathways, and those neural pathways become established such that they become the path of least resistance. They become the modus operandi. It's the way that you then choose naturally to live your life as a self-loving expression. And the biggest challenge that we're all dealing with ultimately is that we each have a core fear. And in one form or another, that core fear is that I'm loveless, unlovable, that I'm not smart enough, that I'm not pretty enough, that I'm not clever enough. Whatever it is, it's this notion that nobody sees my true worth. And so therefore, I either hide or I do whatever I can to promote myself. And so we have this spectrum of ways that people establish or do things to establish a sense that they're lovable and that they have worth, and that they have something worthwhile and meaningful to contribute in their world. So as you become more aware of your worth, and that's part of this ongoing commitment to saying what would be more self-loving here, and you start to naturally adopt more self-loving behaviours, which is evidence of the value that you see in yourself, there's a natural inclination to then be more compassionate and loving to the people around you. So part of living life mindfully is that you then become naturally focused on self-compassion and compassion for other people. So that awareness goes beyond just being aware of yourself. It then becomes a natural behaviour for you to be aware of people around you, and it's compassionate based awareness. And so what ends up happening is that compassion based awareness becomes benevolence, and benevolence is ultimately kindness. And so you are naturally inclined to be much kinder in terms of how you relate, not only just to other people, but to the planet and to the critters on the planet. So in other words, you turn up in the world with a greater sense of being not only loving to yourself, but loving to the people and the planet around you. So that's a fairly important part of living life mindfully, and that would be evidence of a life lived mindfully, is this natural inclination to find balance between the love of others as well as the love of self, and being committed to that. So you actually end up developing a devotion to being present enough to be compassionate in that way. What emerges from that is a desire to find your unique expression of service, and this would be referred to as your purpose. And so one of the other key elements to living mindfully is that you have clarity of purpose. In other words, you have this ability to turn up to each day with a clear sense of your contribution, or what it is that you're committed to contributing, that balances this sense of love of self with the love of another. And the expression of purpose often is an extension of the gifts and abilities that emerged out of your story. And if you remember, we talked about the story as being the strategies and the beliefs that you developed out of your core fear. Your core fear in one form or another being about not being lovable enough. And so what happened, in order to prove your worth or your value, you established a whole lot of ways of turning up in the world that you've spent many years working on, and which emerged as some skills and abilities. It's now about taking those skills and abilities, instead of them being used to establish your worth, those skills and abilities are now applied to how it is that you're able to serve and make a difference in the world. And so it becomes a completely different motive for why these things are being used. But you've already got these abilities and these skills, and so you're already in a position to be able to then use these to make a difference in the world. So in my case, for example, where my story was around essentially not being noticed, a big part of what I did was to be noticed, and that was public speaking. It was about my ability to function as a health professional. It was about developing training programs, being able to write. All of those things were things that I worked on in order to be noticed. Now that I've moved into this place of being clear about purpose and contributing in the world, I'm able to take all of those skills and abilities that I developed in terms of public speaking and writing programs and training and all those things, and use them, which I have done through the development of EAP, to be able to make a significant difference in the world, no longer being driven by my need to be noticed, or there's always still going to be elements of that there, but ultimately with a very clear sense that this is how I'm able to contribute and make a difference in the world, and of course in applying it to myself, making a difference to myself. So ultimately, living life mindfully is having that commitment to staying aware of a more self-loving alternative, and being committed to maintaining mindfulness, that there is a more self-loving alternative. And trusting in the whole notion that as I continue to foster that and foster the understanding of how it will benefit me, that there's a point where I will automatically align myself in my choices to live in that self-loving expression. Out of that is this sense of a greater sense of my worth, and therefore the self-love then expands to incorporate other people, and so this compassion becomes something that goes beyond myself and it extends to the people in my world, the planet and the critters that live on the planet. And from that, and from my story, which has been a part of the fear and the limiting part of my life, I'm also able to become clear about the purpose and the tools that I have to fulfill that purpose. The journey to get from living in our fearful place to living in our loving place is what EAP is about. It's everything that we've been talking about through this series on living mindfully. It's about developing awareness, and from awareness, choosing to live mindfully. Hey, thank you for taking the time to listen to the series. I hope you've been able to find them of benefit. If you know somebody else that's struggling in terms of being able to move into a more self-loving expression for their life, that's not just a fleeting experience, but something that's sustainable, tell them about EAP and tell them about this series of blogs. They're free. You can find them on the front page of our website, down the bottom of the front page. And these are really wonderful tools to help make a difference. Once again, if you want to know more about the program, give us a call. Our details are on the webpage, or go to our webpage. There's lots of information there. We have a wonderful Facebook page, Enhances Awareness Program, which has daily and weekly tools for about living life with mindfulness and awareness. Anyway, thank you for following the series. There's new blogs and new avenues of focus that I'll be working on through the rest of this year, and I hope to have you link into those at a later date. Anyway, thank you for listening, and catch you soon. Bye.